Hi guys, today we are going to review our last couple of lessons of ratios, rates, and unit rates. And so that's what our quiz is going to be on Tuesday. So let's look at what a ratio is. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers. So it would look something like this. 2 to 3. It could also be written like this. Or sometimes they'll ask you to write it in a fraction form. And then sometimes they'll ask you to explain what this means. So let's take, for instance, that these were triangle, well, let's not do that. Let's do cats and dogs, right? So we would say for every 2 cats, there are 3 dogs. We're comparing how many cats there are to how many dogs there are. And the sentence is pretty simple. All you have to do is just change out the number and then the word of what the unit is that we're talking about. So in this case, we're talking about cats and dogs. So let's move on to rate. What is a rate? A rate is like a ratio. It's normally written in a fraction form. The only difference is instead of not including the words, you're going to include the words. So if I wrote 36 miles in 3 hours, this would be considered a rate because it's comparing 2 different units. Another way sometimes you could look at that is 19 songs in 5 minutes is another way you'll see rate written. So as we look around, we have our ratios, which just include the numbers, and they look like this. We have a rate, which sometimes looks like this, where you're comparing and you're including the words. And then the last one is a unit rate, and the unit rate is basically a rate, but simplified, so 1 is at the denominator. So in this case, if we take this problem, if 3 goes into 36 evenly, I would say that this person traveled 12 miles in 1 hour. Or another way we could write that is 12 miles per hour. The same with this one. I can simplify to get a unit rate in this one. So 19 songs, I'm just going to rewrite it like this, in 5 minutes. Here, I can't easily divide 5 into 19, so I just actually have to do the math and divide, and I'm probably going to get a decimal. So 5 goes into 19, right? We have 5. 4, bring my decimal, is 3.8. So in this case, the unit rate would be 3.8 songs in 1 minute. So that kind of shows you the difference between a ratio, a rate, and a unit rate. So let me just give you a couple of examples. One example of how we figure out what a ratio is. So let me erase this really quick and we'll do an example. All right, so I'm just going to draw a simplistic image. So let me just draw this here. And I want you to write the ratio of a triangles to rectangles. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out how many triangles there are. And so in my image, I see 2. I'm going to use the colon just because that's how the directions are. And then I'm going to count how many rectangles I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I have written a ratio. Most of the time we really like to get in simplest form, so I have to figure out what the greatest common factor is between 2 and 8, and I know it happens to be 2. So I can simplify this to 1, 2, 4, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So my ratio of triangles to rectangles is 1 to 4. Now I just have to write that sentence. Again, it's a pretty standard sentence. So for every 1 triangle, there are 4 rectangles. So when you're asked to do a ratio, you just need to count or use your numbers, simplify by finding the greatest common factor, and then you write your sentence. For every one triangle, there are 4 rectangles. So that's an example of what a ratio is. So now let's take an example of what a rate is. So let's look at a rate. We'll just write it out as 35 songs in 5 minutes. Okay, and we're going to actually take this, we're going to write it as a rate, and then we're going to figure out how many songs in 1 minute. All right, so first I'm going to set it up as a ratio, or as a rate. So the first one they gave me is 35 songs. I'm going to put that over 5 minutes. And they want it to figure out how many songs in 1 minute is what they're trying to ask us. So I'm first going to see, does 5 go into 35? And it does. So I would say there are 7 songs in 1 minute. So this would be our rate, and this would be our unit rate because it has a 1 as a denominator. So that's how you can make your correlation. A rate is just basically pulling the information and writing it on top of each other. A unit rate is simplifying, so you get 1 as a denominator. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. Study for that quiz, and we'll see you on Tuesday.